The massive white Dogo Argentino stood in the hallway, his powerful jaws clenched around something small and metallic. Blood stained his pristine coat, not his own, but from the intruders who had fled into the night. His dark eyes, usually gentle and playful, now burned with the intensity of a warrior who had just saved everything he held dear. The Thompson family stared in disbelief at their beloved Zeus, but it wasn't his protective stance that shocked them. It wasn't even the way he had single-handedly driven off 3 armed burglars. What left them speechless was what he held in his mouth, a USB drive that would expose the largest jewelry theft ring in the city's history. Detective Martinez would later call it the most extraordinary case of canine intelligence and loyalty he had ever witnessed. The FBI would classify the information on that drive as crucial evidence in a multi-million-dollar investigation. But for the Thompson family, standing in their ransacked living room at 3 in the morning, Zeus had just proven that loyalty knows no bounds. But to understand how a family pet became an unlikely hero who brought down an entire criminal organization, we need to go back to where it all began. Before we dive into this incredible true story, I need you to do something. Drop your country in the comments below and hit that subscribe button, because stories like Zeus's deserve to be shared across the world. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Meet the Thompson family. David, a 38-year-old architect who worked long hours designing commercial buildings. Sarah, a 34-year-old pediatric nurse whose compassion extended beyond the hospital walls. And their 8-year-old daughter, Emma, a spirited girl with pigtails who dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. Their suburban home in Colorado Springs sat quietly on Maple Street, a tree-lined avenue where neighbors knew each other's names and children rode bicycles until streetlights flickered on. It was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked and worried more about missing the mailman than about crime. But the real heart of the Thompson household was Zeus, a 2-year-old Dogo Argentino whose 100-pound frame was matched only by his gentle soul. Despite his intimidating appearance, with a broad chest that could span a doorway and jaws powerful enough to crack bones, Zeus was Emma's constant companion and the family's beloved gentle giant. Every morning, Zeus would pad softly to Emma's bedroom, his massive head nudging open the door as he checked on his favorite human. He'd wait patiently as she got ready for school, his tail wagging rhythmically against the hardwood floor. When David returned from work, Zeus would greet him with the enthusiasm of a puppy, despite weighing more than most people. Sarah often joked that Zeus was more human than dog. He understood emotions with uncanny accuracy, offering comfort when someone was sad, celebrating when the family was happy. During Emma's fever last spring, Zeus had refused to leave her bedside for 3 days straight, becoming a furry guardian. Angel, the breed's history ran deep in Zeus's veins. Dogo Argentinos were originally bred in Argentina for big game hunting, designed to track and hold wild boar and mountain lions. Their creator, Dr. Antonio Norris Martinez, had envisioned a dog with the courage of a warrior and the heart of a companion. Zeus embodied this duality perfectly, a protector who chose gentleness, a fighter who preferred peace. But beneath that calm exterior lay something the Thompson family had never seen, an ancient instinct that had been dormant for 2 years, waiting for the moment when everything they loved would be threatened. 3 blocks away from the Thompson home, Vince Castellanos sat in the driver's seat of a stolen Honda Civic, his fingers drumming nervously on the steering wheel. At 31, Vince had spent more years behind bars than as a free man, but desperation had driven him back to the life he'd tried to leave behind. Beside him, Marcus Torres checked his watch for the 5th time in 2 minutes. The 26-year-old had been Vince's partner for 3 jobs, each one making them bolder, more reckless. In the back seat, Jimmy the Wire Patterson fidgeted with his lock-picking tools, his reputation for getting through any security system preceding him wherever criminal circles gathered. But this wasn't just another burglary. 3 weeks earlier, during their last job at the Meridian Jewelry Exchange, Vince had made a critical error. In his haste to escape security guards, he dropped a USB drive containing detailed information about their entire operation, locations of future hits, contact information for their fence, even security codes for high-end establishments across 3 states. The drive had been picked up by a jogger that morning, a good Samaritan who turned it in to the police before anyone realized its significance. But somehow, through a stroke of luck that criminals call divine intervention, the evidence had never made it to the detective's desk. A clerical error had sent it to the property office, where it sat in a lost and found box with dozens of other forgotten items. Marcus had learned about the drive's location through his cousin, who worked nights cleaning the police station. The plan was simple: retrieve the drive before anyone discovered its contents, then disappear into different states until the heat died down. But fate had other plans. The USB drive had already been picked up by someone else, a police clerk, who'd taken it home, thinking it might contain family photos that could be returned to their owner. That clerk lived on Maple Street. That clerk was David Thompson's neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who had asked David to look at the drive since he was good with computers. David had glanced at it briefly the evening before, seeing only encrypted files that seemed unimportant, and had set it aside on his home office desk, planning to return it to Mrs. Henderson the next day. None of this was known to Vince and his crew as they approached the Thompson house at 2:47 a.m., believing they were about to rob the home of a police clerk. They had no idea they were walking into the territory of a dog whose protective instincts ran deeper than any criminal had ever imagined. Zeus, sleeping peacefully in his favorite spot by Emma's bedroom door, suddenly raised his massive head. His nostrils flared slightly, catching an unfamiliar scent carried through the house's ventilation system. His ears, usually relaxed, pulled forward with laser focus. Something was wrong. At precisely 2:51 a.m., Jimmy Patterson crouched beside the Thompsons' back door, his lock-picking tools glinting in the moonlight. His fingers, steady from years of practice, worked methodically through the standard residential lock system. Within 90 seconds, the deadbolt clicked open with a soft metallic whisper. Inside, Zeus's eyes snapped open completely. The Dogo Argentino's massive frame remained perfectly still, but every muscle had shifted into a state of coiled readiness. His breathing changed from the deep rhythm of sleep to the shallow, controlled pattern of a predator assessing a threat. Vince entered first, his footsteps deliberately careful on the kitchen tiles. Behind him, Marcus and Jimmy followed in single file, their flashlights creating dancing shadows on the walls. They moved with the practiced silence of men who had done this dozens of times before, but they had never encountered Zeus. The dog's first instinct wasn't aggression, it was assessment. His massive head tilted slightly, triangulating the sounds, counting the intruders, determining their positions. Emma stirred in her sleep, and Zeus's protective programming shifted into a higher gear. These weren't welcome guests. They were threats to his pack. In the master bedroom, Sarah Thompson's nurse-trained ears caught a sound that didn't belong, the soft creak of floorboards bearing weight in the hallway. She touched David's shoulder, whispering urgently, "David, wake up. Someone's in the house." David's architect mind, accustomed to analyzing spatial relationships, immediately understood the geometry of their situation. The sounds were coming from the direction of Emma's room. His daughter was in danger. Meanwhile, Zeus had made his decision. Rising silently to his full height, the Dogo Argentino stepped deliberately into the hallway, his 100-pound frame cast, a shadow that seemed to stretch endlessly in the dim light. His presence filled the space like a living wall of white marble, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Vince rounded the corner first, expecting to find a clear path to the home office. Instead, his flashlight beam illuminated 2 dark eyes that reflected the light like polished obsidian. The massive white head was lowered slightly, lips pulled back to reveal teeth that seemed designed for violence. "Jesus Christ," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. "That's not a dog, that's a lion." Zeus didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply stood there, radiating a presence that spoke of power held in perfect check. The message was clear. Go. No further. Jimmy, ever the professional, tried to circle around the dog, thinking he could slip past while the others distracted it. But Zeus's head turned with mechanical precision, tracking the movement while never losing sight of the other. Two men. His tactical awareness was extraordinary, a testament to generations of breeding for intelligence and courage. It was Vince who made the first crucial mistake. Panic overriding judgment, he lunged forward, hoping to intimidate the dog into backing down. Zeus responded with lightning speed that defied his size, darting to the side and positioning himself directly in front of Emma's bedroom door. The confrontation had begun, but this was only Zeus's opening move in a battle that would test every instinct bred into his powerful frame. As the three intruders regrouped in the hallway, something unexpected happened. Emma's bedroom door opened slightly, and her sleepy voice called out, "Zeus, what's wrong, boy?" The sound of his favorite human's voice transformed Zeus completely. What had been controlled assessment became absolute determination. This wasn't just about territorial protection anymore. This was about defending the most precious thing in his world. But here's where the story takes its most crucial turn. As Zeus repositioned himself, his powerful paw accidentally knocked over a small wastebasket near David's office door. The USB drive, which had been sitting precariously on the edge of David's desk, fell to the floor and skittered across the hardwood, coming to rest against the baseboard directly behind Zeus's front legs. At that exact moment, Vince's flashlight beam swept across the floor and illuminated the small device. His eyes widened with recognition and desperate relief. There it was, the drive that contained enough evidence to put them all away for 20 years. The very reason they had risked everything on this job. "There!" Vince hissed to his partners. "Behind the dog! We have to get it!" But Zeus, following, his natural instinct to investigate anything unusual in his territory, lowered his massive head and gently picked up the USB drive in his mouth. To the dog, it was simply another object that didn't belong, something to be moved to safety, away from these intruders who threatened his pack. What Zeus couldn't know was that he had just taken possession of evidence that would unravel a criminal organization spanning 3 states. The 3 men stared in disbelief. Their entire future now depended on getting past a 100-pound Dogo Argentino who had just inadvertently become the most important witness in a federal investigation. Marcus was the first to speak, his voice tight with desperation. "We can't leave without that drive, Vince. If the cops decode it—" "I know what happens if the cops decode it," Vince snapped back, his composure finally cracking. In the master bedroom, David had armed himself with a baseball bat while Sarah called 911 on her cell phone, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We need police immediately. There are intruders in our home with our daughter." The dispatcher's response came through clearly. "Units are being dispatched now. Stay on the line and try to remain calm." But Zeus was far from calm. The dog's body language had shifted again, his stance widening as he settled into a defensive position that martial artists would recognize as perfect tactical positioning. His head remained low, the USB drive secure in his gentle but firm grip, while his eyes tracked every movement of the 3 men. Jimmy, growing impatient, pulled out a small knife from his toolkit. "I can take the dog," he said, trying to sound confident. "Dogs are all bark, no bite." He had no idea how wrong he was. Vince studied the situation with the calculating mind that had kept him alive through years of criminal activity. The dog was intelligent, that much was clear. It had positioned itself strategically, secured the object they needed, and was prepared to defend its territory. But intelligence could be used against an opponent. "Listen," Vince said quietly to his partners, "we split up. Marcus, you go round to the living room and make noise, get the dog's attention. Jimmy, you come with me from the other side. The moment he moves toward Marcus, we rush him together." What Vince didn't understand was that he was dealing with a breed specifically developed for group hunting scenarios. Dogo Argentinos had been bred to face wild boar and mountain lions, animals that required tactical thinking and coordinated responses. Zeus's ancestors had hunted in packs, but they had also learned to face multiple opponents alone. As Marcus moved toward the living room, Zeus's ears tracked the sound, while his body remained perfectly positioned. His breathing was controlled. His muscles relaxed but ready for explosive action. This wasn't fear, this was preparation. The dog's tactical awareness became evident when he took 3 calculated steps backward, positioning himself where the hallway narrowed. Now, instead of allowing the men to attack him from multiple angles, he had created a choke point where they would have to come at him single file. David, hearing the movement and recognizing the tactical advantage his dog had created, made his own decision. Despite Sarah's whispered protests, he moved toward the bedroom door, baseball bat in hand. If Zeus was making a stand, David wouldn't let him fight alone. But as David opened the bedroom door, Zeus turned his massive head slightly and fixed his owner with a stare that communicated more clearly than any words. "Stay back, protect your pack. I've got this." The depth of understanding between man and dog in that moment was profound. David realized he wasn't looking at a pet anymore. He was witnessing a warrior who had accepted full responsibility for defending everything they both loved. Zeus turned back to face the intruders, the USB drive still secure in his mouth, and waited for their next move. The gentle giant had become something far more dangerous, a guardian with nothing left to lose and everything worth defending. In the distance, sirens began to wail, still minutes away, but growing closer with each passing second. The real battle was about to begin. Marcus had positioned himself in the living room as planned, but as he looked back toward the hallway where Zeus waited, doubt crept into his mind. The dog's positioning was too perfect, too intelligent. This wasn't a simple house pet. This was something else entirely. "Vince," Marcus called out in a harsh whisper, "maybe we should just cut our losses. The cops are coming, and that dog has our lives in his mouth." Vince shot back. "Everything we've worked for, every job we've planned, it's all on that drive. We don't leave without it." Jimmy had moved to the opposite end of the hallway, trying to flank Zeus from the other side. But as he crept closer, the Dogo Argentino's head turned toward him with mechanical precision. The dog's dark eyes seemed to look right through him, calculating distances, measuring threats. It was then that Jimmy noticed something that made his blood run cold. Zeus wasn't panting with stress or fear like most dogs would be. His breathing was controlled, measured, the breathing of a fighter who knew exactly what he was capable of. In Emma's room, the 8-year-old had fully awakened to the sound of voices in her home. But instead of crying out in fear, she whispered to her door, "Zeus, I know you're out there. You're the best boy ever. Don't let the bad men hurt Mommy and Daddy." The sound of Emma's voice did something extraordinary to Zeus. His massive frame seemed to grow even larger, his presence expanding to fill the hallway like a living barrier. The USB drive in his mouth might as well have been welded there. Nothing on earth was going to make him release it while his family was in danger. Sarah's voice came through clearly on the 911 call. "My husband is by our bedroom door with a baseball bat, and our dog is confronting the intruders in the hallway. Please hurry. I'm afraid someone's going to get hurt." The dispatcher responded, "Ma'am, police units are 2 minutes away. Keep yourself and your family in a secure location." But Zeus had moved beyond following commands or seeking security. He had entered that ancient space where domestication falls away and millions of years of predator instincts take control. Yet even in this primal state, he remained focused on protection rather than aggression, a testament to the careful breeding that had created his noble bloodline. Vince made his decision. "On 3, he whispered to his partners. "Marcus, you rush him from the front. Jimmy and I will hit him from the sides. If we can overwhelm him, one of us can grab the drive." It was a plan that might have worked against an ordinary dog, but Zeus was no ordinary dog. As the three men began to move, Zeus demonstrated why the Dogo Argentino had been called the white gladiator of the canine world. Instead of waiting passively for their attack, he took a single, calculated step forward and released a sound that none of them had heard before. It wasn't a bark or a growl. It was something far more primal, a vocalization that seemed to come from the deepest part of his chest, a sound that spoke of power held barely in check. It was the voice of a protector who had moved beyond warning into the realm of promise. Come closer and face the consequences. The sound froze all three men in their tracks. In that moment, they realized they weren't dealing with a pet that could be intimidated or overwhelmed. They were facing a guardian who would fight to the death for his pack. Outside, police sirens grew louder. But inside the Thompson house, time seemed suspended in that hallway where a white warrior stood between his family and those who would harm them. The next 60 seconds would determine whether Zeus's loyalty would be measured in courage alone or in blood. Marcus rushed first, hoping to tackle Zeus head-on, while his partners flanked from either side. But the Dogo Argentino had been waiting for exactly this moment. As Marcus closed the distance, Zeus exploded into motion with a speed that defied his massive size. Instead of meeting Marcus's charge directly, Zeus pivoted with the fluid grace of a dancer, letting the man's momentum carry him past while simultaneously snapping his powerful jaws toward Marcus's reaching hands. The crack of teeth on air sounded like a rifle shot in the narrow hallway. Marcus stumbled, off balance and suddenly terrified, crashing into the wall with a resounding thud that shook picture frames loose from their hooks. Jimmy approached from the left, his knife gleaming in the dim light, thinking he could catch Zeus while the dog was focused on Marcus. But Zeus's battlefield awareness was extraordinary. Without fully turning his body, the Dogo Argentino's massive head swiveled toward Jimmy, and those dark eyes locked onto the blade with laser intensity. Jimmy had never been looked at like that by any living creature. It was as if Zeus was reading his intentions, calculating his next three moves, and preparing counters for each one. The knife in Jimmy's hand suddenly felt inadequate against an opponent who radiated such controlled lethality. Vince, seeing his partner's faltering confidence, made a desperate lunge for the USB drive still held securely in Zeus's mouth. It was the worst decision he could have made. Zeus's response was instantaneous and devastating. The dog dropped into a crouch and then launched himself forward with the power of a missile, his 100-pound frame becoming a white blur of controlled violence. His shoulder caught Vince in the midsection, lifting the man off his feet and slamming him backward into the hallway wall with bone-rattling force. But Zeus's most remarkable quality in that moment wasn't his physical power, it was his restraint. Even in the heat of battle, even with adrenaline coursing through his massive frame, he never released the USB drive from his mouth. His jaws remained gentle around the small device, even as they promised devastation to anyone who came too close. Jimmy, panicking now, slashed wildly with his knife, hoping to wound the dog enough to create an opening. The blade whistled through the air where Zeus's head had been a split second before, but the Dogo Argentino had already moved, flowing like liquid silver in the dim hallway. Zeus's counterattack was precise and terrifying. His massive head struck Jimmy's wrist with controlled force, sending the knife clattering across the hardwood floor and into the darkness. Jimmy cried out in pain and clutched his wrist, certain that bones had been broken by jaws that could crush steel. Marcus, having recovered his balance, tried once more to grab for the USB drive, thinking he could wrestle it away from the dog's mouth. But as his hands reached forward, Zeus demonstrated why his breed had been developed to hold wild boar and mountain lions. The dog's jaws opened just enough to shift the USB drive to the side of his mouth, then snapped shut around Marcus's, reaching fingers with precisely calibrated pressure. Not enough to break bones, but enough to trap the man's hand in a vice of living steel while delivering a clear message. Any further movement would result in consequences Marcus didn't want to imagine. Marcus froze, his hand held delicately, but firmly in Zeus's mouth, the USB drive still secure on the other side of those powerful jaws. The man's eyes widened with the realization that his life now depended entirely on the mercy of an animal he had underestimated. "Let go of me," Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible. Zeus's response was to tighten his grip just enough to make his point clear. He would release Marcus when Zeus decided to release Marcus, not before. It was at this moment that David Thompson stepped into the hallway, baseball bat raised, ready to defend his family. But what he saw stopped him cold. Zeus stood in perfect control of the situation, one intruder's hand held gently but firmly in his mouth, another nursing a damaged wrist, and the third slumped against the wall, winded and defeated. The USB drive remained secure, and his family remained safe. The dog's dark eyes met David's, and in that exchange was a communication deeper than words. The battle was won, but Zeus would maintain control until reinforcements arrived. Outside, police cars screeched to a halt in the driveway, their red and blue lights painting the walls of the Thompson house in alternating colors of justice. Heavy footsteps pounded up the front walkway as officers responded to Sarah's 911 call. But inside the hallway, Zeus maintained his position, the white guardian who had turned the tide of battle without shedding a single drop of blood, his own or anyone else's. His restraint in the face of violence was perhaps more impressive than his physical prowess, demonstrating the perfect balance of power and control that defined his noble breed. The gentle giant had become a warrior when his family needed him most, and now, with victory secured, he waited calmly for the proper authorities to take control of the situation. The USB drive in his mouth would soon reveal its secrets, but Zeus had already revealed something far more valuable: the true meaning of loyalty, courage, and love. The front door burst open as Colorado Springs police officers flooded into the Thompson home, weapons drawn and voices commanding, "Police, show me your hands!" But the scene they discovered in the hallway was unlike anything in their combined decades of law enforcement experience. Zeus remained perfectly still, his massive white frame radiating calm authority as he held Marcus's hand in his gentle but unyielding grip. The USB drive was still secure in the side of his mouth, and his dark eyes tracked each officer's movement while maintaining complete control of his prisoners. Officer Jennifer Walsh, a 12-year veteran with Canine experience, immediately recognized what she was witnessing. "I've never seen anything like this," she would later tell reporters. This dog had single-handedly neutralized 3 adult suspects and was maintaining perfect custody of evidence. It was like watching a perfectly trained police dog, except nobody had trained him for this. Detective Carlos Martinez arrived within minutes, having been called from his home when the 911 dispatcher recognized the address. Mrs. Henderson had filed a report about her missing USB drive just the day before, and Martinez had been assigned to the case. As he surveyed the scene, the pieces began falling into place with stunning clarity. "Zeus, release," David commanded gently, and the Dogo Argentino immediately opened his jaws, freeing Marcus's hand while carefully shifting the USB drive to the front of his mouth. The dog then sat in perfect heel position beside his owner, the evidence still held securely, but now displayed clearly for the officers to see. Marcus collapsed to his knees, cradling his uninjured but thoroughly chastened hand. "That dog," he gasped to the officers. "He's not normal. He knew exactly what he was doing." Jimmy, still nursing his wrist, looked at Zeus with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. "I've been bit by dogs before," he said quietly, "but this one, he chose not to hurt us. He could have torn us apart, but he chose not to." Vince, slumped against the wall and struggling to catch his breath, could only stare at the white guardian, who had single-handedly destroyed their criminal enterprise. 30 years I've been doing this," he muttered. 30 years, and I get taken down by a house dog." But Detective Martinez was already examining the USB drive that Zeus gently released into an evidence bag. Within an hour, The contents would be decoded in the police station's computer lab, revealing a treasure trove of information about a criminal organization that had eluded law enforcement for 2 years. The drive contained detailed floor plans of jewelry stores across Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico. It held contact information for fences, security guards who had been bribed, and even photographs of stolen merchandise worth over $3 million. Most importantly, it revealed the locations of 2 major stash houses where police would recover stolen goods from dozens of unsolved cases. Sarah Thompson stood in her doorway, still in her pajamas, watching as the 3 intruders were led away in handcuffs. "I keep thinking about what could have happened if Zeus hadn't been here," she said to Detective Martinez. "They were heading toward Emma's room when he stopped them." Emma herself appeared at her bedroom door, rubbing sleepy eyes and looking for her beloved guardian. Zeus immediately padded over to her, his massive head lowering so she could wrap her small arms around his neck. "Did you save us, Zeus?" she whispered into his fur. "Did you save our whole family?" The transformation was complete. The warrior dissolved back into the gentle giant, his tail wagging softly as he accepted Emma's praise and David's proud hand on his head. Detective Martinez would later file a report describing Zeus's actions as the most extraordinary display of protective intelligence and restraint he had witnessed in 15 years of law enforcement. The FBI would officially commend the dog for his role in breaking up the jewelry theft ring, and the story would make national news within 48 hours. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of the entire incident was what happened in the days that followed. Mrs. Henderson, learning that her USB drive had contained criminal evidence, thanked Zeus with the largest dog bone she could find. The local veterinarian offered free healthcare for life. The mayor presented Zeus with a ceremonial key to the city, yet Zeus seemed most content when life returned to normal, sleeping by Emma's door, greeting David after work, and playing in the backyard as if nothing extraordinary had happened. 3 criminals received sentences totaling 67 years in prison. The stolen jewelry was returned to its owners. The corrupted security guards were fired and prosecuted. An entire criminal network collapsed because of evidence held in the mouth of a dog who had simply been protecting his pack. But for the Thompson family, the most important resolution was the deepest understanding of what they had always suspected. Zeus wasn't just a pet, he was family, and family protects family, no matter the cost. As I finish telling you Zeus's incredible story, I want you to think about something profound. In a world where loyalty often comes with conditions and courage is measured in convenience, a dog showed us what absolute dedication looks like. Zeus didn't calculate the odds. He didn't weigh his safety against the danger. He didn't consider whether protecting his family was worth the risk to himself. When the moment came, he simply became what love looks like in action. A guardian willing to stand between those he cherished and any force that would harm them. The story of Zeus teaches us that heroism isn't about size or strength, though he had both. It's not about training or preparation, though his instincts were perfectly honed. True heroism is about the moment when everything you care about is threatened, and you choose to act not for glory or recognition, but because love demands it. Emma Thompson is now 11 years old, and she still sleeps peacefully every night, knowing that Zeus is watching over their family. David has framed the newspaper articles about their heroic dog, but what he treasures most is the memory of those dark eyes that said, "I've got this," when everything seemed lost. Sarah continues her work as a pediatric nurse, but she often tells her colleagues about the night she learned that guardian angels sometimes have 4 legs and hearts bigger than their massive bodies. And Zeus? He remains the gentle giant he always was, playing in the yard, greeting visitors with a wagging tail, and napping in sunny patches on the living room floor. But the Thompson family knows, and now you know, that beneath that peaceful exterior lies the heart of a warrior who proved that loyalty isn't just a word, it's a way of life. The criminal organization that thought they could intimidate their way to success learned that some bonds can't be broken by fear. The three men who entered the Thompson house that night expecting to find easy targets instead discovered that home isn't just a place, it's something worth defending. Zeus's legacy extends beyond that single night of courage. He represents every protector who stands guard in the quiet darkness, every loyal heart that beats stronger when love is threatened, and every soul brave enough to say, "Not on my watch." This is Wind Echo Untold, where we bring you stories that matter, tales that remind us what's possible when courage meets love. Zeus's story isn't just about a dog who saved his family. It's about the hero that lives inside all of us, waiting for the moment when we're called to be more than we thought possible. I want to hear from you in the comments below. Tell me about a time when loyalty or courage changed everything in your life. Have you witnessed a moment when someone, human or animal, stepped up when it mattered most? Your story might be the next one we tell. If Zeus's incredible journey moved you, if it reminded you that heroes come in all shapes and sizes, then smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Share this story with someone who needs to remember what loyalty looks like in action. Because in a world that often feels uncertain, stories like Zeus's remind us of something unshakable. Love will always find a way to protect what matters most. Subscribe to the Echo of the Wind channel for more incredible stories. Until next time, keep believing in heroes. They are everywhere, sometimes wearing fur coats and wagging their tails, waiting for the moment to show the world what true loyalty means.